Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you the top 10 best ARC transporters, so let's get straight into it. In at number 10, I've decided to put the gas bags, as I really do like this as a creature concept, especially when it comes to all things transporting. This does have a lot going for it in that sort of niche, let's say. It is a reasonably fast and effective creature for getting around the map with some serious speed, and it has a lot of heft to it when it comes to weight, and that is a key part of transporters. And obviously the speed does apply quite well too, but this has sort of the best of both worlds. The only reason why it's not particularly high on the list is they can be an absolute pain to tame with them glitching all over the place, and on top of that as well, they can take a little bit of getting used to in terms of flying these things for the first time. I definitely didn't have the best time when recording this B-roll, because it was a couple months back when I really didn't fly these things a lot. I think it was a good 6 months back actually when I recorded this. At some point I'll redo this and probably show off some better gas bag flying skills. That's definitely something to consider though. You can bring a friend along with you, which, you know, it makes it nicer. They've just got tons of weight though. You'll have no trouble transporting metal and goods like that around the map with these things. Next up, I've decided to put the Pteranodon, as this is just one of those creatures where it's like, you really can't get away with not having one of these to a degree. Yes, it is just really unlocked early on, and that is a great use for it as a early game transporter. This had it was unlocked at level 38, but soon after you do get things which are a lot better, which is why I am going to knock this creature back a little bit. That is why I've knocked this creature back a little bit, but it still does have a lot of merit in transportation, not only from you, but it can get some things around too, like some other players and some resources if you're careful about the weight, which isn't really that great on this thing. It's so much more spread across Arch maps than the gas bags that I find it simply has to be a better transporter. It's got more access and you unlock it way earlier on. Its tame method is way simpler, simply just a bowler and some tranks. So it's another good transporter, but maybe look for something else if you're at a higher level. Next up, I've decided to put the Snow Owl, and this is one of those creatures where it has the gliding ability. Is very easy to tame. It spawns on Fjorda as well as Extinction, so don't get too miffed about the map. Not sure about the gas bags actually, but I think that might have a Fjorda appearance somewhere along the lines. But yeah, this is mainly an Extinction creature. I usually tame it on Extinction, but you can do it on Fjorda too. It has the gliding ability, which really does just boost it as a transporter. It adds just so much speed and agility to this creature, although it can't dive bomb attack like the Griffin, which is later on in today's list. It still can do quite a lot when it comes to traveling quickly. It may not seem like a very fast flyer just going around normally. It's only slightly faster than RG, at least from just observations that I've done. When you do this, it is just such a great flyer and transporter just for all goods. Its weight is very decent too, so is its stamina, and it's got loads of other wide uses too, like this sort of UV, I mean, no, it'll be no, it won't be UV because wrong ray. I'm thinking infrared. There we go. That's heat. UV is that's too high on the electromagnetic spectrum. Sorry, not physics lesson we want here. Either way, back to Arc. Talking about stamina too, they've got tons of it, and that is great, especially for healing up creatures, because the more stamina they have, the longer they can heal for. Their pellets are also great with gachas, and that is just something which I really like about these creatures, and I really like them as a whole. Great transporters, easy to tame, and got some other uses along with them too. In at number 7, I've decided to put the Desmodus. This is one of those creatures where it spawns on Fjorda, and there is a lot going for it other than its transporting abilities, like Sanguine Elixir and the Blood Bag Farms. Just absolutely fantastic ability to have. But again, it has that gliding ability like the Snow Owl. It may not appear to be the fastest flyer right off the bat, although definitely faster than the Snow Owl in general flying. That glide sort of dive bomb thing, which the Griffin also has. Again, we will get onto that later, it really does make this thing an even better flyer. But it has a lot of agility and mobility in some other areas too, like the fact that it can grapple onto any kind of wall or vertical surface with absolute ease, even ceilings actually. Just make sure not to press space after you do this. I mean E, not space, because you will fall off your mount, and I'm sure someone's done it before. Just don't make that mistake. Continuing on, I've decided to put the Bloodstalkers. This is my all-time favourite underwater travelling mount as a whole. I love it for all of its underwater travelling needs. At least from my perspective, it really does excel in this aspect. It is a truly remarkable tame for everything like that, but also on the surface too, it really is a great one. But let's talk about why it's so good in the water first. Firstly, actually, not to do with the water, it can glide along the top of the water, and although it's not going to be in the water at the time, it can offer some quick escapes at points where you may need it most. You can also see all the aggros of the creatures around you in a low visibility environment such as the ocean. This is going to be an extremely helpful one, at least it is for me. I'm not blind or anything, but you know, it just helps to know if the creatures are actually aggro onto you or they're just being, you know, as they are, just sort of NPC things just wandering around and giving you no business or attention whatsoever. But then as soon as you hop out of the water, which is extremely mobile and diverse in, you've got all of that extremely mobile, diverse mobility on land as well, and that is going to hugely benefit it as a creature, and I really love all of its mobility. It deals a reasonable amount of damage too, which people don't give it enough credit for. You are essentially just Ark's version of Spider-Man, and that is also just really cool. In at number 5, I've decided to put the Astrodelphis and the Tropognathus as a little mention here as well, as I really do love these two creatures as transporters. They can get a lot of goods from A to B, especially considering their ridiculously fast speed. The only thing that really does hold them back is fuel is required for this to actually work, and they can be a little bit of a pain to tame. Yes, the both of them. The Astrodelphis, I would say, is maybe slightly harder, definitely more expensive, and the saddle is something which you're going to be spending a lot more time getting up to, but you know, it's still not really the end of the world with a creature like this. You can get quite a significant amount done in terms of, you know, traveling around, and also you can get quite a significant amount done in terms of taming these things, especially on Gen 2, as element is like absolutely everywhere. You can get tons of it in the space biome, you'll have no issues whatsoever. So on that map, they're relatively cheap. I think you can get them on Fielder as well. They definitely do suit the map nicely. I like them for all of that. They are really great creatures, they're really fast. Just be careful about those requirements, because that's probably the only thing that's really going to be holding you back when using a creature like this one. Now, in number 4, I've decided to put the Griffin. Maybe you want to see it higher, but for me, this is where I put it in terms of transporters. It has the dive bomb ability, which can deal tons of damage, sort of as it suggests in a way, but that really does attribute it to being quite a nice flyer. This isn't its default speed, by the way. It's been sped up quite a lot here, as I had this really insanely movement speed cranked Griffin, because yes, I use speed levels, I'm that kind of person, and I really love a fast Griffin. It can get a lot done for me, but even at basic speeds, with that dive bomb, you just get an insane amount of acceleration. It actually really is absurd what you're getting of a creature like this, and in just general PvP terms, they are great PvP creatures. But for PvE use as well, they're one which many players do attribute to some of the best. They are truly great in my opinion. Also for doing Wyvern trench runs, you're going to have no issues with using something like this. For dealing damage, you're going to have no issues with using something like this. And for transporting goods around the map, considering their great weight and general overall stamina and speed, you're going to have no issues with that whatsoever. In at number 3, I've decided to put the Argent, as I find it's just been in the game for a while, okay? Maybe you think the Griffin is a better transporter, but when it comes to things like Metal, Crystal and Obsidian, little can beat the RG. It has been in the game for so long, and it has been carrying it ever since its release. While maybe there's some other creatures, and obviously evidently better creatures for transportation than the RG, considering the creatures which are higher on the list, it's only making the number 3 spot. Still very good. I think this is where it really does need to be, for the fact of how much is just done over all of Arc, and the fact you get 50% weight reduction on things like Metal, Crystal and Obsidian. It's still an insane thing to me. Yes, I might be still a little bit stuck in the primitive age, but I think it really does deserve a lot more than it's getting these days. I love the RG for all that it offers. Its saddle acts as a portable smithy. You've got a nice regen buff. It can pick up tons of creatures and transport them around the map with genuine ease. You're going to find no issue with using this creature as a transporter. While it may not be the fastest out there, that isn't what it needs to be a good transporter. It can carry hefty loads with absolute ease, and you can get around the place, maybe not in the most timely fashion, but you'll get there safely and reasonably efficiently with a lot of stuff with you. In number 2, I was really thinking about this one, but I'm going to put the Rhino here because it is a very fast, effective flyer, obviously spawning on the island and the Lost Island, but the fact that it can pick up so many kinds of creatures really does make it such a great transporter in my opinion, and this is why it really does take the cake for me in the number 2 spot. I was thinking put the RG a little bit higher, but I think considering this thing can pick up Rexes, Diplos and Paraceratheriums, it really does just deserve to be here for a great Arc transporter, because at the end of the day, if you can pick up creatures like that, it has to be one of the greats. And yes, cryos exist, and obviously soul traps if you use that mod as well. I do, because cryos frankly are just way more annoying than the soul traps mod. Comment down below if you use that mod as well, by the way. I'd like to know how many other people out there are using said soul traps mod. But yeah, considering it can pick up that wide range of creatures, I think it is extremely deserving of the spot. It is a very fast travel mount too. It is capable of gaining significant speed on it, and it deals quite a hefty amount of damage too. Great for PvP and PvE uses. Its tame method is just exactly the same as the Reapers really. I won't go into it in this video because it could be a little bit of a drag. Let's get into the creature in at the number 1 spot. And finally, in number 1, I've decided to put the Maywing, as I really do like this as a general creature in its concept, but also really, is it beaten when it comes to general travel mounts? The Maywing has just such an insane amount of speed to it. I think it really is unbeaten when it comes to transporters. Maybe it doesn't have the highest weight out there, but it can transport any kind of baby of any size along with it, which is something which can't be said about the Rhinognatha. It can about the Gigantoraptor, but that is not making the list today. I think all the creatures here do definitely succeed that in terms of transporting ability. So you can do all of that, but you can still get quite a lot around with you with like relative ease and across a very long distance in a very short amount of time, because again, Maywings are really the kings of travel when it comes to it. On flat terrain, they are absolute beasts at it. Maybe not going very vertical, but still a lot can be done with these things. They also act as a portable feeding trough. They're pretty good swimmers, and they can gather berries. There's so much going for these things, but in my opinion, they take the cake for the best travel mounts in Arc, and I don't really think anytime soon that is going to be changing. In at number 10, we have got the Uteranus, and although this creature was just viewed as a creature which is going to buff all of your creatures in a boss fight, don't know why I said creature that many times in a sentence, but either way, this thing is obviously mainly used to buff creatures in a boss fight with its courage roar, but it also just worked as a pretty decent carnivorous mount, and you can actually do bosses with this dinosaur, which most people probably wouldn't consider doing, and maybe it's not the best option. If you go to something like a Rex, you probably have a higher success rate, but you could definitely do it with something like the UT, and you can have a pretty decent success rate nonetheless. And actually using a UT in some cases can be a lot better than the Rex, because they're much more mobile creatures and you may just like them more. And if you breed them and you get some really good ones, they can be really good for that use. They're just general great meat harvesters and hide harvesters as well, because they kill loads of creatures. And obviously you can use their fear roar as well. Not really in boss scenarios, but you can kind of use them as a sort of turret thing, that like if someone's coming to raid your base on a Pteranodon, you can always just fear roar those things away is what I meant to say, and then from that you can essentially disable them from raiding you, which is actually a pretty decent strat if you've never tried it. Next up, we have got the Basilo, and this creature can actually make oil in its inventory, which is actually a pretty useful thing. And you know, you might just use this thing as a caving creature, but it is also a pretty good creature for exploring just the general ocean biome, which is actually quite an integral part of the game in some ways, as obviously it's ocean caving, but also for a lot of resources you need to explore, you know, get loads of oil and silica pearls and black pearls and all of that. And I know they do have a depth limit, but still that doesn't really hinder them, and again they are immune to jellyfish and electric eels. I say it a lot on the channel, and that is something huge about these creatures. And they also do have an X variant, so there's an even better version of these creatures out there, and they can also make little rainbows as well when they jump out of the water, which is actually quite cute. I know it doesn't really affect their abilities and their uses, but you know, just a nice cool feature which might brighten up your day. Next up, we have got the Theory, and this creature has to be here as it is just so good at gathering all kinds of resources, which obviously makes it a very versatile creature in all kinds of anything really, and especially that fiber gathering, as fiber is one of the most essential resources in the game, and you'll pretty much struggle to find a better creature than a Theory which can actually gather fiber. And obviously you can use a sickle, or you can use a moss chop, so that's another great creature for you to use for this. The Theory just does it better, and it's pretty easy and accessible to tame. You just have to be level 69.
Nice.
That joke gets me every single time, but you know, it's actually pretty hard to find a really decent fiber gatherer, and this is a really decent fiber gatherer, but obviously it can gather all kinds of berries, wood, thatch, and all of that. And it's also pretty decent for the dragon boss fight because it's a herbivore, so it doesn't get affected by the dragon's fire attack, which is particularly lethal to carnivores and not very friendly to them whatsoever. So, you know, that's where the benefit of this comes in. But sadly, you can't just use meat to heal them. You have to use something like sweet vegetable cake, and that is frankly quite expensive, so that is a downside. But apart from that, they really are great creatures. In at number 7, we have got the Baryonyx, and this creature is just so good at caving, but it is also great at several other things as well. But the caving just make it inherently versatile in itself, because being able to do caves and all kinds of caves and travel around many situations in caves is inherently versatile, and obviously it's a really great underwater mount as well, so that is again another really great use for this creature. And they do obviously have that spin attack, so they can stun creatures up to the size of a megalodon, which does play huge benefit in their ability. And if you do have one of those things, I definitely recommend you getting one of these things into the water, not just using it predominantly as a land creature, although you probably will predominantly use it as a land creature. Get it in the water and you get its feet wet and actually use it in the water, and you'll probably find that you really like this creature in that environment as well. Yeah, maybe it doesn't have the greatest amount of speed like some of the newer creatures out there, but considering it spawns on the island, you really can't go wrong with this creature. So that is why I put the Barry in at the number 7 spot, and you can see there that megalodon is just completely frozen. So if you're in a pinch and need to get out of a sticky situation, you can always do it with the Barry. Next up, we have got the Rhinogonatha. Personally, I don't really like this creature because I find it's a little bit too overpowering in what it can do, but I know loads of you out there really like this creature, and I'm not going to diss it for its versatility, even though it's not a favourite of mine. So I am going to put it on this list, although you might not quite agree with my next choice, which is my preferred option, and I will say it, albeit this is the kind of better creature in my opinion. It's just I don't enjoy using it, which is why I put it lower on the list. But still, this creature is full of very exciting opportunities. This thing can pick up creatures up to the size of a Rex, and can pick up Parasaurs, pick up all kinds of really big creatures, which is inherently a really great use in its own thing. Cryos do exist though, not on ASA at the moment, so it's the only way of really getting those big creatures around. But on normal up, you can make do with cryos, and you'll definitely have loads of them by the time you get the setup for this thing, or even attempt to tame one, because it is quite a difficult, lengthy process. Pretty much just a rip-off of the Reaper Tame, but you know, it is the same game publishers and the same game makers, so you can't really call it a rip-off, let's say, because I just said that earlier. You kind of maybe call it a rehashing. It's a little bit different, of course, because the way you get 100% effectiveness is with all of those resources which are just on screen there, and if you feel like it's too unnecessary to read all of those, then it's probably too unnecessary to get all of those to actually get 100% effectiveness. And you're not bringing this thing to a boss fight, don't really think that is very useful or worth your time. I just recommend saving the highest level when you can, and you don't need that 100% effectiveness. It's fine. You can just wait it out and you'll be good. But if you really are a perfectionist, obviously I'm not going to stop you from doing that. Also, these creatures are really great at raiding bases. Like, they deal a heck of a lot of damage. They're really quick flyers. They have a lot of carry weight, so you can transport a lot of metal around with them. And they are just inherently really big, beefy creatures, but not as big as maybe you would expect. Obviously, these things don't have a platform saddle like the Quetzal, so that still does have a slight gain over this thing, but it is a really versatile creature. Although, personally, I don't really like it and kind of what it is, the creature. I think it's too overpowering. I'll still admit it's a very versatile creature. Now, in at number 5, we've got the Argy, and this creature just had to be here for me above the Rhino Ganasta because I think it's a superior creature. It fits into the game more, and I really like its regen ability, the fact that its saddle acts as portable smithy, and it really seems to fit into the game, and it's a pretty easy tame as well. Not saying that the Rhino Ganasta tame being really difficult like devalues it as a creature. No, it's a much higher level, so you would expect a harder tame method, but still I think again that does kind of make the RG a lot more accessible. Albeit, yes, the RG can't pick up anything like Rexes and all of that. I think that is personally a little bit stupid. I should really stop ranting on about the Rhino Ganasta, because I know loads of you out there really like it. So I'm going to stop that, and I'm just going to talk about the RG, because I don't really think I should be dissing your opinions, although I should express mine. I think I've done it enough, haven't I? Either way, the RG can pick up a wealth of creatures. Obviously, it does have that regen buff when it kills a dead thing. Well, it's alive, and then it kills it, and then it's dead, and then it eats the dead thing, and then it gets the regen buff. And then it has, obviously, a portable smithy as its saddle, which is useful because this thing's it's got really great weight stats, so you can get around really quickly and easily just in the general area, and then from that you can take loads of metal to and fro wherever you're going, and yeah, that does play a huge benefit in your advantage. So the RG at number 5. Next up, we have got the Shadowmane, and this is just one of those creatures where it's so densely packed with abilities, it kind of has to make the list, or this list just really isn't right. The Shadowmane has the hydration buff. The Shadowmane can really jump to insane heights that no flyer is safe, and also on top of that, it does have the pack buff. It can go invisible, and it's a really great swimmer. It's just really, really mobile. Again, can jump extremely high into the air. It can also charge up its damage as well, doing even more. It's just such a great boss creature, and just great for general travel, mobility, general combat, PvP scenarios, PvE scenarios, you name it, this thing is really good for it. The only real downside is the lack of armor from a saddle, but they have natural armor, so I guess that kind of accounts for it. It's not quite as bad as a Wyvern, where they just have absolutely nothing at all. And as you can see there, it's so good underwater, and actually quite a lot of people demote it for that and they just use it for combat, but it's a pretty good underwater caving creature too, and somewhat of a Baryonyx replacement, although I tend to prefer the Baryonyx just a little bit for those scenarios. At number 3, we have got the Desmodus Draculae, and this thing it's one of those creatures where maybe it doesn't have the most amount of abilities, let's say. Obviously it does have the gliding ability, and it can farm blood bags, but it has really unique abilities that makes it so versatile. And obviously that Sanguine Elixir allows for creatures to be tamed so easily, as 30% of it is done right there with just a click of a button. And the blood bag farming is invaluable really, because the blood bags were just such a pain to get before this creature came out. Obviously it's tamed with blood bag, so you still need to do that quite lengthy process to get your first one, but just get a really low level one for your first one, get the lowest you can, and then use that to farm loads of blood bags, and then get the highest level that you can. That's my recommended strat anyway. For the Desmodus, these things can also go invisible at night time as well, but stupidly I was in the Wastelands biome and it never goes nighttime there, and you can't really change that, so that's good for me choosing the perfect biome for this creature. In number 2, we've got the Bloodstalker, and this creature, I feel like people diss it for what I really use it for, and maybe some people will think, well, the Shadowmane and Desmodus are more versatile. This is just a travel mount, and you can't really use it for bosses and all of that. And albeit, yes, you can't, but it is a really exceptional underwater mount, which is why I put it here. And it's actually my favourite underwater mount with no questions whatsoever. Sorry about the yawning there. It's quite late in the evening as I'm recording this. But yeah, these things are my absolute favourite underwater creatures, no questions asked. They're so quick, they're so easy to take in the water, they can skim over the top of the water, which the Shadowwing can't do. I know the Maywing can, but the Maywing's not on this list because it's only really great for travelling, and yes, that thing with all its breeding abilities essentially acting as a portable feeding trough, and it can carry babies around the place. Yeah, it's useful for that and versatile for that, but personally I think all the creatures on this list do excel a little bit further than that. That's just kind of maybe genuinely what you would expect, just like 2 abilities at a minimum. But yeah, this creature, you can gather loads of hexagons with it on Gen 1. I know that point's probably going to come back to bite me actually with the Maywing when you look at some of these other creatures on the list, but I just don't really think the Maywings should be on the list. But I guess it got an honourable mention spot here, you could say. But either way, these things are capable of getting loads of hexagons on Gen 1. They're really fast travelling creatures, of course. They're really great underwater, really quick. Obviously you take them with blood bags, so easy to get with the Desmodus. You might as well just do that and then tame yourself a really high level Bloodstalker, because it will be saving you the most time, unless you're just using creatures on Gen 1 or Gen 2, whatever map you're taming this thing on, if you want to go the more authentic route. And finally, in at number 1, we have got the Deinonychus, and this creature can deal bleed damage to bosses, which inherently makes it really versatile for like every boss, apart from the bosses on Extinction, of course, because of that bleed ability. It's just so useful for getting all of that done, and its abilities are quite versatile as well. It's a really great travel mount. This thing does take no full damage whatsoever, which is a pretty rare occurrence on any kind of dinosaur, so it's nice to see. And the fact that it can latch onto creatures and just rip them to shreds with that bleed ability truly is a sight to be seen. And again, to my knowledge, no other creature can do this, and no one has seemed to have questioned me on it over the, like, however long I've been doing top 10s, months and months now. Like, it's coming up to maybe a year at this point. I don't know. No one has questioned me on this, so I'm pretty sure, I'm perfectly confident that it's true. Let's say 99%. These things also do have a pack buff as well, which again is going to boost them in those boss scenarios, and they have a heck of a lot of mobility on top of just them not being able to take full damage. Because, you know, would you rather have the small Titanosaur that can get around everywhere, or the big Titanosaur that just can't take full damage? You're probably going to go for the smaller agile one, because I don't know why I use a Titanosaur there, but either way, yeah, this thing could parkour up walls. You know, that's actually quite useful. Maybe not as elegant as a solution as the Thyla, because those things can just kind of walk up them, run up them as you wish, but it does the same thing. It just in some ways is a little bit more janky, but you get used to it, and actually after a while it kind of ends up being a little bit better. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and as always, comment down below what is the most versatile Arc Tame, as I want to know your thoughts. And also, do you agree with this list? If not, comment down your top 10 or just your most favourite versatile creature, and I'll see you later.